Hey everybody, it's your boy, and I thought I'd make a video about whether or not all of it really is all doom and gloom, because we always hear from certain sections of the internet, in particular the online right, that everything is doomed, everything is broken, it's not fixable, we're just going to have to wait for the collapse, and then, I guess, just accept defeat, because the left are always going to win, because society always goes ever further leftwards, and countries like China will rise and take the likes of America's place, and the world will be, well, depending on which doomer's side you're actually on, that could be either really bad or really good. But is it really all doom and gloom? Is it really? Well, let's just take a little look at what actually is going on in the world right now. In regards to the geopolitical situation, things could be arguably a lot worse. Yes, in Ukraine, for example, I don't think NATO's done a very good job in preventing war in that area of the world. It was something that took them completely by surprise, and it's something really that they should have seen coming, because the Intermarium, which is basically all of Eastern Europe that is against Russia, warned them for years that this could potentially happen. Lo and behold, it happened. But aside from that, which again, it's not a foregone conclusion that either side are going to win or lose, it could be worse. Although unfortunately, the biggest problem that this war has brought upon the rest of the world is the ongoing inflation and price rises and supply chain issues, which also weren't helped by the previous pandemic. In regards to, say, China, things couldn't be going better. They're not expanding nearly as much as they were previously. A lot of Western culture, a lot of Western countries are slowly realising that the CCP is not their friend, and are slowly, although they should be going a lot quicker, I do admit, decoupling from China and are trying to find either alternative countries to do business with or bringing jobs back home. Chinese companies are slowly getting banned or are not allowed the influence that they would enjoy in other countries, like Huawei, for example. And China is shooting itself in its own foot with its stupid policies. The chickens have come home to roost in regards to the one-child policy. They now have a massive demographics problem. They have too many men and not enough women, and we're going to see the fallout from that. They have an ageing population, and the country can't look after them, unfortunately, because much like Japan, cultural reasons, laws, etc. have all compiled on top of each other to create this epic collapse, which they can't hide forever. Their most important sector of their economy is in freefall. That is real estate. That's where most Chinese people's money is in. That is going to really hurt them. It's going to be chaos when that bubble eventually pops, which we're beginning to see the beginnings of. They failed utterly in regards to Taiwan. Contrary to what a lot of people on the dissident right said, Nancy Pelosi's visit has not brought us closer to war. What happened in the end? Xi Jinping did nothing. Oh wait, he did kill a bunch of fish. They looked incredibly weak and lost a lot of face from that. And to be honest, they couldn't look like least of a threat nowadays than they did not too long ago. Are they still a threat? Yes, of course. But they are beginning to self-implode. And really, what we should be doing, in the West at least, is to encourage that self-implosion, like we did against the USSR, and help the Chinese people out a bit, you know? China is not going to be the future like people thought Japan was going to be. China will go the way of all the other big geopolitical enemies, but of course there will be others to take their place inevitably. As long as we continue doing the good job that we're doing, decoupling from their economy, getting rid of their spies, trying to cut down on their influence, like TikTok for example, then we're doing a good job. And you can see that happening in the West anyway. You're seeing it in other non-Western countries as well. And again, I don't see any reason to be doom and gloom about that. But then it's the culture war, the big culture war that's been going on for God knows how long now. What about that? Well, let's take a look at, say, the trans issue, which is, again, always going to be a hot button for a while until the left decide to discard it. Well, funnily enough, at least in regards to the grooming that's been going on, countries were already doing things about that anyway, even before it really became a big hot button topic. It only became a hot button topic because governments were already beginning to, let's just say, get worried about it and start coming up with legislation against it. Kids already can't transition in, of all places, Sweden and other Scandinavian countries. In Britain, I don't think they can, but they are slowly but surely, the Conservative Party, making steps towards making sure they legally can't properly. I know there's stuff going on here. Trust me, it's going to happen. In America, because this is a states issue, not a federal issue, they're struggling to get it through. Even in places like California, they can't get it through. And they can't convince people, even in these blue states, that this is the way to go forward. And these are some of the most pro-trans states, pro-trans people you can think of. And even they are like, no, I don't want CRT. No, I don't want this grooming happening to my kids. I want them to grow up normally. So they don't buy it and they don't vote for it. They are choosing to vote for people like Youngkin in Virginia, or against the radical Democrats for people less radical, then go along with that. But if you were in right-wing doomer circles, you would think that they're passing this through, that it's only a matter of time, when things are being done against it. In fact, the war has been won in that regard anyway. The battle was lost for them. They've lost that. And in critical race theory, that's going to be a bit more difficult because, especially in America anyway, with the cultural history and all that, that's going to be a bit more difficult to uncouple. But considering what happened during COVID with the lockdowns and parents finally got a chance to see what kids were being taught in classrooms, yeah, that's going to die as well. In fact, due to what happened again in Virginia and other places like that, the American people have outright rejected it. And especially in this country as well, I don't think people stand for it either, despite the Tory party's best attempts. Eventually, even they had to decide to U-turn and go against their own critical race theory stuff, which they've been trying to peddle. It also helps having people like Kemi Badenoch that are usurping and subverting these leftist CRT-influenced positions, like the Equalities Minister position, and using it against them. If the right can do that in countries that have these particular positions, then the left are going to be muted. Essentially, their own institutional apparatuses will be used against them. We're seeing that happen now. And I don't think they're going to win that battle anyway. It'll be a long, grueling battle because they've already got several years, several decades head start in that regard. But the tide is shifting. There is a snowball effect slowly but surely happening. Obviously, in other countries, the tide will turn eventually, but it will take a very, very long time. In my country, we are several decades behind America in regards to having a right-wing party, a mainstream one that is anywhere near equipped enough to deal with the culture war. Again, even the Republican Party is not that well equipped, but it's a damn sight better than it was when McCain was running the show, and it's also much better than it was when Romney was around. Trump has had a good influence. He's not had a particularly good influence in other areas, but it seems to me that he's emboldened those true Republicans like DeSantis, who are going to take the torch and run with it, and arguably do a better job than him because he himself had massive issues and made several mistakes. And moreover, in America, they actually have people like, again, DeSantis that actually do stuff. They don't just sit there and do nothing, where they promise all these right-wing things. You think, oh yeah, I'll vote for him. And then they do nothing. He actually does stuff. Look what he did to Disney. In Britain, we're seeing slight seeds of that. We see people like Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman and other politicians like that, for example, but unfortunately they are just that, seeds. They are nowhere near ready to take over the party, and some of them, let's be quite frank, they don't have the talent to lead it. They don't have the talent to be prime ministers. They have the talent to be behind the scenes figures in cabinet positions, playing to their strengths, but they're not statesmen, are they? They're not DeSantis types. They might be able to get a few things through, but they're not strong enough yet. And also the party is still full of wets and subversives, for example, like Penny Mordaunt, that need to be physically removed, which thankfully the Republicans are doing a good job in removing the rhinos, but they still have a few other factions that also need to be physically removed before they can even begin to really create the ideal party. But they're getting there. In Britain, we're decades behind, but we will catch up. I am seeing the seeds developing. All it needs is more people entering the Conservative Party to really get the ball rolling. I think If more people did that, if more people had an active hands-on role in that regard, we could really do some good, because at the moment Labour is unelectable, and yet the right in this country has squandered its chance of really gaining some supremacy and getting some stuff rolled back. We've failed because the ones who really could do stuff, who really have the principles, choose not to do anything. People like Steve Baker, people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, they choose to be party men. They choose to follow the party line rather than go with their principles because of responsibility. Your responsibility is not to your party, but to the British people, or to your constituents at the very least. Think about that. And also in places like Italy, I've heard from a lot of my Italian friends, the situation is incredibly grim. And I understand feeling very doomery about that. There doesn't seem to be much positive there. But again, as I tell them, you've got to be your own change. But maybe if you just work on your own lives, and then the people around you try and group together with like-minded people to try to ride out the storm and then come out stronger, that's all you can do. All you can do is plant little tiny seeds. Little ones that will take years to grow, but eventually you could do that. But it's going to take ages. You're going to have to deal with the crap. Of course the left have made gains. They will always make some kind of gain at some point because of the situation we ourselves are currently in. But I don't think they're making as much gains as they did a long time ago. There are certain things now in the public discourse that I wouldn't even have thought would have been talked about previously. For example, thanks to the Johnny Depp trial, but also thanks to activists like Paul Elam, Lucian from Freedom Alternative, MRAs like the Honey Badger and stuff like that, men's rights, men's health is now an actual issue that is talked about. I don't think it was a coincidence that after the trial, or at least during the trial, near towards its end, I start seeing adverts for men who are being, at least not physically abused, they've not quite gone that far yet, but being mentally abused by their partners, which, by the way, we've all met those guys who were under the heel of their wives. A lot of those men are being abused. I never thought such an advert was possible. I've never seen that until literally a few months ago. That is such a massive white pill, I can't even begin to tell you. I have never seen so many people stand up for one man in my life. I know it's Johnny Depp, but not long before that, everyone, at least most people, hated his guts. And for once, people looked at the evidence, they used their critical thinking and realised, oh crap, we were wrong. That's a massive white pill. Now it remains to be seen if they learn that lesson, but if they do, the gender wars are going against the feminists in a bigger way than we possibly thought. Maybe that's me overthinking it, maybe that's me being deluded, but that's a massive win. I don't think you realise that certain attitudes are beginning to change. But what about things like the World Economic Forum and all these NGOs and things like that? Well, that remains to be seen. Now, they are trying to push zero carbon and are trying to stop us from owning property, but think about it. People love to eat their meat, they love their petrol cars because that's all they can afford. If they do try to take that away from them, eventually, just like how in the communist countries when they tried to take their food away because they needed to save some money, riots happened. If you take a person's means of subsistence away, you get riots. Look what's happening in the Netherlands as a result of them trying to do stuff to the farmers. Well, they had massive protests and road blockages. I think the more the WEF tries to play this card openly and so flagrantly, I think they're going to get a massive backlash because I don't think people are so willing to get rid and change these lifestyles they've had for essentially thousands of years. I don't think it's going to work the way they think it's going to work. But the thing is, where does this doom and gloom stuff come from? I think actually it comes from many different sources. I think it comes from, again, enemy propagandists from places like Russia and China who have a vested interest in making sure that any faction in the West, any movement that could potentially change it for the better and make it stronger, has to be destroyed or at least subverted to essentially work for them, whether they know it or not. And also, the mainstream media has a very good way of doing that also by constantly bombarding people with stories that make reality out to be something that it's not. And also, these people, I think, a lot of them anyway, because of the years of failure, they developed a negative mindset, so they can only see the negative in most things. They don't see the little glimmers of hope or the glaring rays of sunshine or they choose not to. Or maybe some of them want it all to fail. They want all this doom and gloom for various reasons. Maybe they just want to see the world burn. Maybe it's good for their bank account because they make money, because they become relevant if they have constant problems to talk about. But if a lot of these problems are dealt with, where do they turn? I think we all know a few grifters like that. It's many different reasons. But I don't think it is all doom and gloom. Even in the most cooked blue pill countries, there are glimmers of hope. For God's sake, nobody expected the Warsaw Pact to fall, and it did. In fact, they thought it would still be around today. Yet, it's gone. There is no reason why the current world order that we live in can't be changed. There's no reason why we can't do that. But again, it takes effort, it takes work, it takes planning, it takes strategy and tactics, and you need a vision for society as well. And I think for a lot of these people who are doomers, that's too much work as well. They're lazy. Or some of them tried and failed, and rather than get up and try again, they thought it wasn't worth it. I don't know what to say to those people other than that's weakness. It will get you nowhere. I don't care if by the time I'm old, I still haven't achieved my political goals in life. As long as I've somehow pushed something somewhere, I have made things better for other people in the future, I can at least be content. Even if I fail utterly, at least I can say I tried and I made my voice heard. I did stuff. I tried. I would rather go down with my middle finger fully erect, like in They Live, even though he won in that film, than go out crying. I'd rather burn up than fade away. But anyway, I think I'll end the cliches there. Until next time, people, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.